for the nerds. This is for the brainiacs. This what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back. You ain't gonna touch me. You not gonna do nothing. You are not above me. I bet you wish you was me. I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. Well, you know, I'm here with my only friends, and that includes my boy, Tortu.
Baby.
I lost my fucking voice there,
Well, yesterday or today?
What?
I don't know. Yesterday was crazy. I thought maybe you were screaming or something.
No, it was the UFC fights.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't even on the Spaces.
You went to every sporting event in Las Vegas this weekend.
Over the last 3 days, yeah.
That shit was popping. I had a lot of fun.
You went to the Knights game, you went to the Arena football game, and then you went to the UFC.
And while I'm
match.
doing all this, my sidekick is on fucking Twitter blowing out his brains. He's just yelling at people. He's telling them, you know.
What do you? Wow, what's going on here? I had a good day yesterday, man.
Indeed, you did.
I just hung out, played some 2 cards. You know, won some money.
Yeah, it was like one of the best days ever. I mean, the Pirates obviously are in first place now.
It doesn't get any better than that, right?
They won 7 in a row. They had the best record in the National League. I mean, my God. And then Berkey takes hairball for, I don't know, 375, 379. Oh, and then the Twitter Spaces were just.
All I know is
that was amazing.
I woke up to 11 different messages from 11 different people that all said, "What is going on Twitter right now?" And I'm like, wait, what happened?
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
He says that, but he knows he was trending yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, seems to be a common theme these days. Conrad, it seems like you're echoing. I'm not really sure why. Maybe get that other mic away from you a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
We have much bigger fish to fry today than the little bit of alleged drama that may or may not have occurred on Twitter Space yesterday. Who knows? It's gone. It's in the ether. We'll never hear from it again. Instead, we have a story that has been building for the better part of 6 years, I would say. Very similar timeline to my experience with the person in question here. We're joined today by JNandez, former Upswing content creator / coach, who is now on his own, making all the best PLO content out there on the internet. How are you doing, man? Sorry to have you under these specific circumstances, but appreciate you coming in.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
I enjoyed the opportunity. You guys have good energy here.
We try.
Low key, the real reason we have you here is because we want to do a PLO Poker Out Loud, and you seem to be the man to put the lineup together.
I love it. I mean, PLO has been picking up around the globe, and I think live PLO is kind of like next on the corner. Also for South Hawaii, maybe.
Yeah, Joey, Henry, once he's healed. John,
Yeah.
Shout out to Henry, man.
Yeah, Henry took one.
He almost fucking lost his life over there in where was
Bali.
he at? Bali? Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. All right.
On the motorcycle.
Let's cut to the shits a little bit. So I'll start out by painting a little bit of a backstory of how I saw it as an outside observer, and you can kind of fill me in a bit on where that perception may have been a bit off. So my first exposure to you was precisely this drama between you and Upswing. What I knew of you was that you were their hired gun for PLO. You were in the process of creating one of the early courses, and very shortly thereafter, you guys seemed to part ways in a very public manner. And part of that public manner came to be me knowing you as the guy who ripped off a grandma for a bunch of scarves. And I'll admit, as much as I hate Doug, and as much as I know that he's full of shit in the majority of the narratives that he puts out there, I bought into it, man. I thought you were a bad guy. And I held that perception for maybe a year and a half. I think we started interacting a little bit more on socials, and it seemed like you were a pretty reasonable dude. Eventually you came out here, we met, you did Poker Out Loud, and now I kind of understand, okay, you were a bit of a victim of the Doug machine as well. Tell me a little bit about, I guess, that aspect of being misrepresented in such an egregious way?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We talked about this before here before the podcast went live, but when you add humor to any storyline, basically, people are willing to forgive you for misconstructions, lies, or whatever it could be, or really serious allegations. So a lot of people, when they think back about the scarf story or the grandma story, they think that's a funny story, which is because it got represented in a funny way, which is completely understandable because Doug is very skilled when it comes to making humorous content. And if you combine humorous content with serious allegations, then people usually sort of seek after it, essentially, not even fact-checking necessarily what is true and what isn't. So for me, it was a very tough stretch of time because I was in Switzerland, now I'm in Vegas, and I wasn't as aware of like how people actually bought, like how much people bought into this story. And when you think about the facts of the story, which is, or the actual allegations without the whole humorous content behind it, basically someone is accusing me to steal money, in this case, less than $2,000 from an elderly woman. We can get into the midst of the story later on, because that's also not true, actually. Not even the real story includes an elderly woman. But anyway, people were thinking and accusing me to steal money from an elderly person, which just by itself, if you don't add the humor to it, is actually a disgusting allegation to make, if not proven to be true. So I was basically walking from different venues, EPTs, and also World Series of Poker here when I came after the summer, walking into poker rooms, not knowing how many people in the room know me, and also if they do, assume that if they're not PLO players, if they're not following my brand, they probably only know me believing that I'm a scammer, liar, or took money from an elderly woman or a grandmother, which is a very unsettling feeling, basically.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can relate to this very closely, and I don't want to lose the thread of what this podcast is ultimately about, which is kind of revealing the underlying details to the lawsuit and the fallout with Upswing and everything else. But I think a very important thread that we need to pull on is why it's so critical, specifically for like guys like you, myself. I know Charlie's kind of out there in the mix, and a lot of others who've been dragged for years by Doug publicly, and kind of calling out just how that changes the public perception and the narrative based off of the person with the loudest microphone kind of setting the stage. I can relate wholeheartedly to everything you're saying. There was a big thread going on a few days ago about back in 2017 when I opted out for the first big game that Feldman tried to run on the bike. And the majority of the details that were public were either fabricated, exaggerated, or twisted in a certain way to make it appear that I was a villain in a way that made Doug, Ryan Fee, Feldman, etc. all look better, right? And it sounds very similar to this story that you're saying, where it's like it's not bad enough that there is this fallout between you and this company, who's led by this industry leader with a big name and a platform to speak on, but then it turns into this weird like moving the goalposts, where your character is being dragged based off of exaggerated, fabricated, or twisted narratives that only can make you look bad and alter greatly the entire public perception of you moving forward, including your brand and the business that you're trying to build. And I think that's the part that people don't understand enough about. Everybody's like, Doug's funny. Why don't you guys laugh at yourselves more? Like, he's the only one who can really laugh at himself, kind of thing. It's like, there's no humor in destroying a person's livelihood for the memes, right? Especially if you're paying close enough attention to recognize that it's helping his livelihood. Everything is bottom line driven as far as I can tell. And I think we're finally getting to a point where either people are opening their eyes or they've had enough of this nonsense to where they're open to listening to the people that Doug has so wrongfully dragged for so many years. And those people are still staples of the community. It's 7 years later. And all the people that he said are scumbags and liars and scammers and frauds and everything else are still out here putting out good content, playing the game that they enjoy, profiting year over year, and being none of the things that they were accused of being over the past 5 to 6 years. Why don't you give us a little bit more of the details of what the actual truths behind the scarf gate, so to speak, were?
For sure. Like one of the common comments, and I think that's also something a lot of people, I guess, maybe not know enough about because they don't experience it, is that this argument of you can just defend yourself, like why are you complaining? Like you can just go out there and defend yourself. And it's not that easy for several reasons. One of them is platform and reach. And also there are several things. First of all, if someone accuses you of something and he has a large platform and knows how to be convincing, then that first image is already out there in people's heads. And if I make a video defending myself on my much smaller platform, not only will I reach less people, but I will also not reach the same people as Doug is reaching with his video. Even if I would reach someone that watched his video, a lot of people don't necessarily care as much about the defense video as much as about the humorous allegations video because it's more drama, more interesting, more appealing. So for people out there to put themselves into the same shoes and understand the problem potentially is if a big newspaper tomorrow comes out and is accusing you of something horrible, sure, you can defend yourself, but that doesn't remove all the damage that has already been taking place. So even though I come out here and defend myself back then and today, it doesn't necessarily remove all the damage that has been done now and throughout the years and people's first impression. So defense, yes, but it's not as easy and straightforward. What was the second question?
The actual details behind the scarf situation.
Okay, so I worked for Upswing Poker on 2 projects. A lot of people don't know that. They only know the project that I ended up terminating the agreement with, which was called PLO Lab. Prior to the PLO Lab, I created a course that was called PLO University. So anyway, in the PLO Lab, I didn't work on my own accord. I actually had a team of people working with me, and anyone who's running a subscription-based poker site or training site knows that it is helpful to work with other people together, especially back then already with the solvers that are out there. It makes a lot of sense to work with people because you need to run sims, aggregate results, produce outputs, basically takeaways, and generate ideas, etc. So I was working with a team of people, and the irony behind that as well is that one of the allegations that Upswing made against me, even in the lawsuit, was that they didn't know I was working with a team. They only hired me. However, in their own sales copy of this course or this subscription PLO Lab, it states JNandez and his team of pros. So, and there are countless examples just like that, where it's not very difficult to like prove that they're just fabricating lies, obviously. But to the normal user out there who's watching a Doug video, oh, they didn't know he had a team of people. This is so scummy. And that's the first impression, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I had a team of people working with me, and one of those individuals was Philip. Philip back then was a PLO 50 online grinder taking shots at PLO 100. Today, he's actually a run-and-ones coach and plays high-stakes PLO. But back then, we were working together basically in the beginning of his career, you can say. And he had a degree as a chemist, I think, or physician. Okay. I think it was a chemist. And he was very smart about how to run sims and how to extract information/mass data from solvers in order to make them available to me and create content about it, essentially. So we're working together. And in the breakup between Upswing and myself, I took my entire team, obviously, into the PLO Mastermind, and we started creating content there as well as a team. At some point, though, we had several disagreements in that engagement, even a month in already, unfortunately, and I decided to let Philip go and also 2 other people that were working closely together with him. So we basically separated, and they weren't specifically unhappy about that in itself. I also have proof of that. But after about 2 or 3 months, Philip reminded me that we had a conversation in March, which was 3 months, 4 months prior to that message, where he was basically flirting with the idea of creating scarves. He said like his mother can knit and she can create scarves with the JNandez poker logo on it. And if I thought that was a good idea, and I said like, sure, why doesn't she create a sample and send it over to me? He lives in the Netherlands, I lived in Switzerland. Make a sample, send it over. They created a sample, or she created a sample, send it over, and it was like fine. And we said, sure, let's create more of them, I guess. And if we have yearly members, we can send them a scarf as a special reward or something nice, you know.
And to be clear, his mother was 90 years old.
Yeah, she was in her like mid 40s.
Okay.
So again, it doesn't like there is no elderly woman involved. Basically.
Not the vision that he's like trying to portray. It's like
elderly
little
is a
tiny
streaming
woman,
term, you know?
right? On a walker or a cane, who like
Elderly adjacent.
Yeah.
Also, I never talked to his mother on a side note. Like it was Philip and me who basically talked about this idea, and he bought the resource. I mean, he bought basically the knitting equipment or whatever, and then she started knitting. And then 3 months, 4 months in, he sent me a message and said, by the way, she produced now, I don't know the exact number, maybe 40 or 60 scarves, something along those lines. And I want you to pay for the scarves, which came out to about $2,000, something like that, a little bit less than $2,000. It was 6 years ago as well. So I don't remember the exact numbers. It was a large amount that was kind of surprised, basically. And at that time, I was pretty pissed because we started the mastermind with 7 people. I had to let go of 3 because of what I thought was unjustified reasons, so to speak. We can go about this later on. But anyway, I was pissed and I made a mistake and I didn't respond to Philip right away. I didn't say I'm not going to pay for the scarves. I didn't say I'm going to scam your mother or whatever it is. He just sent me a message on Discord and said, here's the bill or the invoice for the scarves. It's $2,000. How do you want to send it? So after 3 weeks of me ghosting him and not replying to his message, he started a thread on 2+2. And at that point, I reached out to him, obviously, I made a mistake, right? I should have reached out, I should have paid for the scarf, and I should have just settled it. Obviously, it was a big mistake on my end. So I reached out to Philip and said, you know what? Obviously, like, let's figure this out. I'm going to pay for the scarves. You're going to send it to me. However, I would like you to send me the scarves so I can pay you for them because we don't have a trust base anymore. And I don't want to send you the money and then not receive anything and basically get scammed in the process. And he didn't agree. He wanted to see the money first. I wanted to see the scarf first. It was a dumb back and forth because at the end of the day, it was about $2,000. So anyway, we didn't agree on the terms exactly. And then at some point I said, you know what? I'm just going to pay for these scarves. Whether I will ever see them or not, I'm just going to pay for it.
Yeah.
But he refused to sell them to me because at that point, there was already appetite from Upswing to jump on this story, specifically Duck, and start twisting the details. And if he would have sold the scarves to me, they couldn't use this as leverage anymore to paint me in a negative picture. So he wouldn't sell the scarves anymore to me because otherwise Doug couldn't turn his mid-40s mother into an elderly grandma and portray me as a scammer on socials. Like the story wouldn't work anymore. So they decided to go that route. And then later on ended up working together on a project called PLO Matrix, the Upswing Poker, and the guys that basically defamed me in this 2+2 post ended up being, you can say, business partners. So I don't know their exact legal agreement at the end of that year.
And there was another detail to this 2+2 post, right? Something to the effect of Philip initially posted, but there was an edited version of it that was quite different than the original post, and potentially Matt Coletta had altered that post.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what happened is I got sued 5 or 6 months after I stopped working for Upswing Poker for breach of contract. In the discovery phase of this lawsuit, which was going on for 2.5, 3 years, I basically received a lot of documents from Upswing Poker, conversations they have in between each other, documents that they created, etc. One of those documents was a conversation that Matt Coletta had with Johnny, who is close to Philip, about this 2+2 post. On top of that, I also received 2 versions of Philip's 2+2 post from Matt Coletta, one of the versions was the original version, another one was an altered version where there were a lot more misleading and defamatory language used that was edited by Matt Coletta. We were able to prove that, and I also posted this on Twitter, where you can see that the last editor of the second version is Matt Coletta. Now, I cannot tell you guys out there what exactly he edited because I just can't prove it, but we have two versions. One of them is vastly different and much more harming, and I posted the differences as well on Twitter, and that's the version that Matt Coletta ended up or that Philip ended up posting under his name, and it would include words like "I'm a scammer," my full name, just like paint the entire story in a more negative picture, basically.
Yeah, and if you guys want to see these two posts side by side or catch any more of the details of that story, you can check out JNandez's thread on Twitter. I think Guapo also may be able to pull them up here and there. That was actually discovered in court, right? Like during the discovery process. So your lawyers used that as kind of a point of leverage, demonstrating that they weren't being truthful about the scarf thing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it demonstrated that there was this conspiracy running between Upswing Poker, who I formerly worked with as a freelancer, and employees of mine, at that point not employees anymore of mine. So basically, if those two parties that previously worked with me are conspiring against me, it's obviously highly unethical behavior, and we're able to prove that in the arbitration.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's get into the lawsuit a bit, and then we can come back. We can circle back to like some of the other misrepresentations. Let's lay out the groundwork. So first and foremost, who sued who, and what were the claims and counterclaims?
So first of all, I got sued by Upswing. It was not the other way around. But again, Doc is trying to paint this as a positive picture, but it's such a negative picture because they sued me for so many ridiculous claims, which, by the way, they lost all of them. So it's not really, oh, we sued him because we were right. I believe that they only sued me because they were trying to basically harm my reputation and also inquire a lot of costs on my end so that I couldn't get my business up and running. That's just my interpretation, obviously, of it. But I got sued by Upswing in about, I think, September of 2018. I worked for them until March of 2018. So basically, after I ended working with Upswing and went my own ways, they started making videos about me and threads. I just remained silent because I wanted to move forward. At some point, I responded, and that response probably triggered a lot of emotions in the Upswing crew or Doc or whoever. So they decided to sue me in September 2018, roundabout. And I posted basically their claims on Twitter in my first thread.
Right. So let me see. The actual claims were sorry, I have the wrong one up here. Okay. So looking at the first thread, basically this ended up being 3 years in court, over 9,000 pages of discovery. Obviously, each of you guys are spending tons of money. They sued you for breach of contract, copyright infringement, and intentional interference with contractual relations, as well as declaratory relief. Did you? That's the suit that they lost, correct?
Yes, they lost all of them.
Okay.
Well, let me correct that. So they had a lot of claims, and at the actual arbitration, they actually abandoned most of their claims because at that point they realized this is obviously absurd and they're not going to win any of these claims.
Okay, so then moving forward, whenever you guys finally took it to court and entered discovery, did you countersue, or was their loss your gain in this instance?
So a little backstory on like working with lawyers in general. My lawyers asked me, what do you seek out of this lawsuit against you, basically? Do you want to fight back? Do you want to basically just move on as fast as possible? And my position has always been, I don't want to be in this at all. I want to focus on my business, on my customers. I want to make content. I don't want to be in a lawsuit at all. Like, I'm getting sued, but I don't want to engage in it. I'm just trying to defend myself, basically. After a year in, though, I spent over $100,000 in lawyers' fees, and my understanding, at least, was, or my naive understanding was, well, if their claims are all false, I will obviously get my money back for the lawyers, for the lawyer fees. And they told me that's not necessarily true. Actually, they can lose all their claims and just basically sue you for quote unquote no reason or without good reason, and you still don't reclaim your lawyer fees. In order to reclaim them, you would have to win a case. So it could make sense to countersue them for defamation, for example. So that's when I started entertaining the idea, like maybe I should sue them as well, because that's going to put them into the defense and also have a bigger chance to win back the money that I spent. And a year in, we weren't even close to arbitration, so I knew it's going to be even more expensive for me to go to arbitration to make this whole thing happen. So by the end, I ended up not only counterclaiming defamation, but also breach of contract, and which is the irony. Like, they sued me for breach of contract. I was never trying to sue them, but then counterclaimed breach of contract on their end and ended up winning because they were in breach of the contract, in fact.
Okay, so all right, so two now separate court cases. First is their claims against you, which ultimately the end result was they lost those, correct?
Correct.
Okay. From that, was anything rewarded to you?
So there were fees awarded to me that I had to come up with. I had to come up with lawyers and defense, and they actually ended up giving me some of my attorney money back because I needed to defend myself against claims that were, in my eyes, absurd.
Right. And then the second suit was your lawsuit against them for breach of contract and defamation. Now, I understand you lost the defamation aspect of it, but you won the breach of contract.
Correct.
And that's where the $150,000 settlement came from?
The $150,000 comes, it's a mix of basically
of the suits.
Legal fees. So to put the numbers in perspective, I spent about $250,000 in legal fees in this case. And again, it wasn't completely a choice because I had to defend myself, but part of my defense was the counterclaim for defamation. That was my choice based on what I just basically told you about my incentives.
Yeah.
And the arbitrator basically argued and said, you decided to claim defamation and you inquired legal fees for that. We're not going to give you those back because that was your decision and wasn't part of the defense. So that's why I couldn't get the full amount back in legal fees that I spent, and only got the money back that I used for defense, plus money they owed me that resulted out of their breach of the contract.
Okay. So all told, how much were they in breach of for the contract? What did they technically owe you?
So they ended up having to pay me for the contract about $17,000 that they didn't pay out. And that's also an interesting twist of the story because in 2018, I got presented with the numbers of the last 4 months I worked for Upswing. And I was under the impression that these numbers were wrong, which ended up being correct. Like, they were wrong. They underreported their numbers. They gave me wrong numbers. My understanding was because they had wrong numbers in their accounting system, they were just like not correct. And I knew from the beginning that the numbers were incorrect, but I decided to move on because I didn't see enough chances to basically win the money back and start a lawsuit and all this kind of stuff. So I knew the numbers were wrong, and I said that on YouTube as well. I thought the number they would owe me is much higher, and the reason for that is because Matt Coletta, the president of Upswing Poker, reported a member account to me. So he basically updated me every month how many members are in the PLO lab, which is the product that we have. And those numbers were also incorrect. So actually he reported to me 850 members in the product. And in the discovery of the lawsuit, it came out that those numbers were incorrect and they only had 400 or 500 members in the product, which is why I was under the impression I was owed a lot more money. So they were not only incorrect about reporting the sales numbers, but also they actually didn't report the member number correct to me as well while we were working together.
Okay, so end all be all, you guys now part ways. You've launched your separate brand. 3 years has passed at this point, so we're like 2021-ish, I would assume. You basically come out on top of the law case and everything else. what was the messaging then from Upswing side? Like, did they walk anything back? Oh yeah, sorry. Actually, before I even ask that question, tell me a little bit more about what you were being accused of, because I know that there was a point where Doug was claiming that you stole intellectual property basically with Play and Explains, as well as like all of your YouTube content was technically owned by Upswing. What was the actual claim there, and then what was ruled in court? Chauncey's here to say hi.
She's interested.
He's here to party.
Chauncey's mad right now.
Yeah. Big mad.
Yeah, that's also one of those nice twists that Doug likes to spin a little bit, which is, it sounds great if you say, hey, we were suing him for breach of contract, but there's a reason why he doesn't want to declare or doesn't say what exactly they were suing me for. Where was I in breach of the contract? So they had many different claims. Basically all of them were absurd, but one of them was, for example, they would say that the format Play and Explain, or Play and Explain Reloaded, as we called in the PLO Mastermind, is a format, and all the poker players know what Play and Explain is basically just over-the-shoulder content. You play and you just commentate on your gameplay online. Anyway, this format Play and Explain, they claim I have learned those from Upswing Poker, and therefore I'm not able to reproduce them in my own company, PLO Mastermind, or on YouTube, because I learned it from them. So therefore, I'm denied to basically continue to do any Play and Explains. And what we haven't mentioned so far is that I was under a freelancer agreement. So I was just making contractual work for a course. And they claim that I cannot make any Play and Explains like Lifetime anymore, which is obviously, again, pretty absurd. But the tricky part about this is, if you go to arbitration, the arbitrator is not a poker player. He doesn't know anything about poker. So you have to really explain what is a Play and Explain and why is it not special or proprietary to Upswing Poker. And we were able to convince the arbitrator of that, obviously, at the end. But that's just like one of the many claims that just...
Well, the big thing was you already had proven examples of having done it prior, right?
Correct. I was making Play and Explains for Run It Once back in 2014.
Like,
Card Runners was making Play and
Upswing,
Explains.
are they like claiming that they invented Play and Explain? Like they were the ones that invented it, and they have proprietary ownership of it, like that?
I mean, for what it's worth, like we have something that I consider to be very unique in Poker Out Loud. And I still don't think we could win an arbitration.
I don't think so either, because I mean, it's not like we have it copyrighted or whatever, or trademarked, or whatever you have to go through.
Nothing you can do to patent it.
Right, exactly. And it's just like,
it's just IP.
I mean, as far back as, like online poker has been around, Play and Explain has been a thing. Tough Fish was doing Play and Explain. Right? He really was.
Yo, he should sue you. Holy shit.
Yeah, and then like you said, you had you were doing this, Run It Once has been doing this forever.
I mean, it sounds like this was a railroading tactic to, prevent you from basically launching your new company and, building off of the back of what you had already done for Upswing. Talk to us a little bit about the contract, because I know that there was what Doug refers to as a loophole in the 90-day termination. But, given... I should outline this a little bit. Like, so given that you are a third-party independent contractor, I mean, to some degree, I'm surprised you even had a contract, right? Because the only reason to really sign one is to ensure that you're like basically under a non-compete for the time that you're working for Upswing, and that part makes sense to me. But generally, with freelancers, they're free to work as they see fit for whoever they see fit. Like, it's rare that you're just going to kind of corner them and make them your own without putting them on payroll. So what was the loophole that Doug kind of highlights with the 90-day termination?
Yeah, that's another nice twist by Mr. Doug. So basically, I had a freelance agreement, which is a very open agreement. Actually, the copyright, for example, not the copyright, the competition clause, like the non-compete, was so open in this contract that I was able to even do other content. It was the only details of the non-compete were that I couldn't use the content that I was delivering for Upswing anywhere else, which made sense.
Sure.
Because it was their content. I delivered it and I created it for them. Mm-hmm. But there was no non-compete otherwise. And the 90-day loophole, as they call it, is basically just my right and their rights to just terminate the agreement. And then after 90 days, basically just move on. So
it was like a 90-day non-compete.
no, it's not a non-compete, but it's like I have to basically produce another batch of content for 90 days after resigning, and then the other way around as well. And this is actually a clause that is very company friendly because they can basically hire a coach. The coach makes 100 videos, let's say. After 100 videos,
Damn.
Dude, this guy's an absolute menace. He fucking bit me. Just now? Yeah, like 5 minutes ago. See, you'll literally see it when the shot was on us. I just like,
oh man,
bro bit my arm. He's trying to destroy us all.
Is it a he or a she?
Yo, did Doug pay you?
I know. I'm just about to say. Yeah.
Chauncey's an agent of chaos. I wish we had like a roving camera so we could just see the look on his face. He just looks so proud of himself.
Fucking Chauncey cam.
He's shocked right now.
Chauncey's working for Upswing.
He's trying to destroy the set.
All right, let's bring it back around. Okay, so to the 90 day.
The loophole, exactly.
Loophole, yeah.
So basically, they can just hire a coach. The coach makes 100 videos. Those videos belong to Upswing, and then they can fire the coach, and the coach has no right to have any. They don't have any compensation anymore for those videos. So actually, it's a company-friendly clause because you can just fire anyone at any point without any reason, which is exactly the way it is stated in the contract, at any point. So it's not like I used this sick loophole and then just came around and backstabbed them or whatever. It was my right to also end at some point because you need to have a way to end the contract as well, and that was the way to end it. Now, the way Doug portrayed it is saying like, oh yeah, like at one point he was saying something along the lines like, I requested it, which is, again, they put it in. I never touched or edited the contract. They at one point they were blaming their lawyers. We have actually evidence that Matt Coletta is editing contracts at Upswing Poker. So it is conceivable to think that Matt Coletta actually put the contract together. Not sure if that's true or not, but like there's strong evidence that suggests that. But it's kind of like, again, lack of responsibility to claim, like to basically go after your lawyers and say, well, my lawyers made a mistake in the contract, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, it probably was different. But also, the 90-day termination clause in my contract was actually in many of their contracts with freelancers. We saw other contracts and my previous contract, and the 90-day termination clause is in there as a default. So it's not something that sneaked into my contract or I requested. It was in the contract of many of their contracts, essentially, not only mine. And I think what actually happened is this. When I told Matt in the end of December 2017, look, Matt, I'm not happy with this relationship. I want to end the contract with Upswing and you. I have a 3-month, like I'm going to work for you guys for another 3 months and then I'm out. He was not surprised about the 3 months or 90 days because he knew the contract. Mm-hmm. But when I then had a 4-way call with Matt, Ryan, and Doug Polk, Doug was extremely surprised. So his first words were when I said, I'm going to resign and I'm going to work for you guys for another 90 days. And this call is all about finding an amicable solution to move forward as 2 brands. His immediate response was, you can't do that. We're going to sue you. And because he didn't know that I could do that, because he didn't know the contract.
Right.
So there was no loophole. It was just that Doug was uninformed. Matt wasn't. He knew there was a 90-day clause in there. I didn't put it in. That's just, again, a fabrication to make me look bad and a lack of responsibility from Upswing side to just stand by their own contract and own words.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. We may have glossed over this a bit, but what was the actual deal that you signed with them? What was the payment? What was the responsibility for you as a content creator?
Yeah, so my responsibility was to deliver a weekly play and explain and also a monthly module or module video. It wasn't really declared how many videos that would be, like how many videos fit into a module. Mm-hmm. The idea of a module is like a theoretical concept, basically. For example, c-betting on the flop or something along those lines.
Right.
So I was delivering one module a month and one way play and explain a week. So you can argue that's going to be about 5 videos a month. It could be also more, but I always over-delivered. So at the end of the day, I delivered 75 videos to the PLO lab, even though I didn't have to.
Right.
Because I wanted to see this project succeed, obviously. And then in return for that, they would give me a 30% revenue share on the PLO lab memberships, which was also something that caught me off guard because after I finished working on the PLO University, the prior product, where I got a 25% share, I talked to Matt Coletta, the Upswing's president, and I told him I'm looking for a 50-50 split. Now, a 50-50 split doesn't mean that I want 50% of the gross revenue or something. It just means I'm looking for something where we're in a fair middle, where we both have the same, basically. And he knew that, and he told me that, and I have a screenshot of it on Twitter. And I started, basically, we were on the same page, so to speak. He knew I'm looking for 50-50, and I went off and started working on the project. And then 3 days or 4 days before the launch of the project, after pre-selling already some copies, I got presented with a contract that entailed a 30% revenue share. So obviously, first of all, obviously I should have requested a contract much earlier, but also I was extremely surprised and also underwhelmed with the fact that they sort of deceived me into believing that I'm going to receive a 50% contract, and they 3 days prior to the launch give me a 30% contract. So I wasn't happy with that either.
Yeah, these rev share deals are kind of tough because you're really at the mercy of the company. So I know that in the notes that you gave me, there was a point where they ran a launch where they promised access to the PLO lab for $1. And that's pretty shitty for you as the content creator if you don't have a base salary, right? Because let's, for instance, say that I want to get into PLO on our site tomorrow, right? And it's like, oh, well, we don't have any PLO content. We need to bring people in, yada, yada, yada. Let me go out and get JNandez. And I say, hey, listen, I'll give you an 80-20 split on the rev that we do on this PLO course. And then I turn around and I sell it for $1. What the hell? That's relatively useless. And these sort of like baked in, like ad campaigns that you're going to run in order to get feet in the door, that's where the majority of your traffic is going to come from. So I don't know how much of that actually falls under the payment that you did. Like, I don't know how many of those members paid next to nothing. But when it was all said and done, were you like happy with the actual payment?
I mean, the vast majority of people that were in the product moved from the university, PLO University, into the PLO lab for, as you said, like a very small or like basically $1.
Yeah.
I wasn't as focused on. So I wasn't as focused on. Am I happy with the situation now as far as like the money goes? My idea was more. I'm entering the coaching space. I mean, I started making Twitch content, or I started working on coaching in poker in 2014 on one-on-ones, and then on Twitch by myself, and then with Upswing. I was focused on my trajectory as a coach in the industry and building something that has substance over the years. Mm-hmm. So as far as the PLO lab goes, I was like, yeah, I mean, I understand that companies sometimes can only offer 30%. Like, it could make sense. I was just unhappy with the deceptiveness of like, look, guys, why do you do this to me? You put me into a spot where we discuss something like 50-50, and then 3 days before you come with 30%, where you basically know I cannot decline because the marketing campaigns are already out there. My name is already out there.
Right.
We pre-sold the product. So if I turn around now and say, I'm going to decline, then I'm the big loser. So why do you guys need to put me into this position? But I decided to move on and say, okay, look, we're going to make it work anyway. So what I'm going to do is I told Upswing, I'm going to build a software project that I want to work with you guys together that is going to expand Upswing's offering into the software market. That was basically my idea of saying like, hey, look, I'm going to find like other ways to work on this thing. So I moved forward, but then there were like many other reasons why I felt like completely unsupported or deceived in the relationship, where at some point I was like, I don't think I want to continue with those guys. Like small details, like fine print stuff, for example. It's not only that the 30% is mine, but also I have to pay all the affiliates, which wasn't clear beforehand. The affiliates would get lifetime revenue share, which means that in my subscription model, they would basically get money from me all the time. Again, all these things could be fine in an agreement where we both agreed beforehand and knew what we're getting into. But I thought I was deceived into this agreement by them, which I wasn't happy in terms of the intentionality behind it. Like, do I want to work with people that want to do things like that? And there were like other reasons, like 2017 was when Bitcoin rose from 3K to 17K. It was a big time for crypto back then. And basically, Doug and Matt and Ryan, they launched a new project, a crypto project. I think it was called Coin Central. And they spent a lot of time on crypto projects. and I just didn't feel the support or the desire from their side to do much in the poker space or poker coaching space. So it was like, why am I working with these people that A, deceived me, and B, they're not really interested in poker at all. Like, they're interested in crypto. Like, I don't really want to move forward in this relationship.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. We all know how that timeline played out, a la CoinFlex. Let's talk a little bit now about, I guess, let's circle back, I suppose, to that time between, I guess, when you left and maybe the end of the lawsuit. I'm not really sure how long the dragging took place for, but let's talk a little bit about how this all played out in the public eye. So obviously we've discussed the scarf narrative and how you kind of were portrayed to be a scammer, but it wasn't like as if that was the end all be all. There was one video done and, you know, you're now forever the guy who ripped off a grandmother. It seemed as though there was a lot of subtle attacks sent your way, largely in the 2018 timeline, I guess. Tell me a little bit about what that was like, what that was like during that time, like the attacks that Doug was putting on you. Give us a little bit more of a reference point for that, and then we can discuss a little bit more in hindsight.
Yeah, so the main problem that I have with Doug, also like to clarify that, is not that he made a mistake in or they made mistakes in business dealings. It's not really about that, because when you make business, and like, we're all poker players and we sometimes start a business, we make mistakes, I make mistakes, they make mistakes. Most of them come down to communication, not just like lack of experience. This is all fine. Like, their contract wasn't great, like the communication had issues. All these things they are just happening in the real world. And I'm the first to admit that I'm making mistakes all the time when it comes to communicating to my team right now, and I'm trying to learn and improve. What I have a problem with is the intentionality behind then afterwards trying to damage someone's reputation over and over again by misconstruing the reality. And this is what followed our relationship after 2018. So I exited the company, and most normal humans would then say, you know what, let's go our ways. We're going to build our thing, you're going to build your thing, and that's it. But Doug can't do that. Like, he has to continuously engage and misconstrue and lie. I mean, I posted basically misrepresentations and lies about me on Twitter today, this morning. Mm-hmm. And I realized that Twitter only allows 25 replies in a thread. And I had to make 5 parts, because there's so many lies that Doug put together in the last 5 or 6 years about me that they filled up 75 tweets or 100 tweets, basically. It's just so many, right? And I didn't want to let him get away with just like pointing out some highlights. There's just so many lies. And these lies are created in a way to really take someone down. I think basically the impression that Doug has about, you can say, real life is that it's all a game, you know, like there are opponents and enemies, and there are allies, and you're one or the other. And it's about destroying and taking down the opponents, basically. And he takes the same approach in real life by just thinking about, how can I take a situation, something someone said, and put it into a different light so I can destroy this individual's reputation or business or peace, whatever it is. And there's several of those instances. For example, when I ended the relationship with Upswing under the terms of contract, I wasn't in breach, I wasn't a liar, I didn't scam anyone, didn't harm any elderly people, I didn't do any of these things. Upswing Poker as a company, which is also shocking, decided to host and publicize a website on their website, Upswing Poker, about me. And it was featuring my full name, my screen name, and it was called The Dirty Dealings of Fernando Habeco, aka JNandez 87. It was listing me as a scammer, a thief, an unethical person, like a backstabber, like all these things on their website. We're talking here about a multi-million-dollar business that decides it's a great idea to put up a website about someone individually that worked with, like that on their website. And they held this website up for 2 years. So my #1 search result on YouTube, on Google, was that.
Jesus.
And if you think about this, I mean, Matt Coletta, the president of Upswing Poker, has an SEO optimized. He has a company that offers SEO services. Mm-hmm. Upswing Poker is very successful because of their SEO skills. So the reality is, if I wanted to rent an apartment if I wanted to buy a house, if I engaged with someone in real life outside of poker, it is not
an actual job or something like that. Right. Yeah.
Go
they're going
to
to
the
Google
bank.
you. That's the first thing they're going to see every
Correct.
time.
At the first entry people will see is the dirty dealings of JNandez and all the accusations above it. And I had to deal with that for 2 years. Like, you can't just take down a website. It is a decision by a company that makes millions of dollars. Like, it is just absurd, basically. And I would say that the website was sort of the most damaging thing that they could have done, because it really connected or moved beyond the scope of the poker space. It moved into my personal life, and like people around me, my family and so on, they would find that search result about me on Google, and they themselves were unsure. Oh, what's going on? What are you doing? Like, I know you're playing poker and I know you're always like acting the way we know you, but what's going on with these dirty dealings, So it can really mess you up in many ways when people do stuff like that. And after I basically counterclaimed or sued them for defamation, then at some point 2 years in, they decided to remove the webpage.
At that point, like, I assume the majority of the piling on kind of had subsided. Mission accomplished. You're 2 years in.
Yeah, the damage was done.
Yeah, the damage is done. You're in legality, or you're in the court system now. And there was a ton of these misrepresentations. I remember, I'm signed up to like all these newsletters and whatnot. And you have a post here saying that on January 7th, Doug sent an email to Upswing customers stating, Fernando has decided to quit the PLO lab. He's going to be leaving Upswing in 90 days. Instead of fulfilling his promise and commitment to you as a PLO lab member and Upswing to produce content for them, or for 18 months, sorry. And I remember this getting leaked, I think on 2+2, perhaps. This is all vague memory, but this is obviously like a clear misrepresentation, as that's, and I want to be clear, because like this is something that I think Doug is very good at, right? Nothing in that collection of sentences is objectively false, right? Like, he takes partial truths and strings them together in such a way that misrepresents, like, out of context, it just completely misrepresents what's actually happening here. Like, yeah, Fernando did decide to leave the PLO lab after 90 days. Yes, he's not going to be fulfilling an 18-month contract or anything along those lines. And yeah, it's the people who subscribe to the lab that are going to be without him as now a coach. But the wording of this is that it's an intentional decision to hurt the consumer and basically spit in the face of those who are putting good money towards his coaching, right?
Right.
That, in a nutshell, to me, is what we've allowed this brand to become, right? When I think of Upswing, I don't think of like great poker coaches. I don't think of the best content out there. I think of like an outdated lab that hasn't been upgraded in years. I think about a heads up course that's 5 years old and is probably barely even serviceable at this point. Like, and then I think about a bunch of hired guns who come in, do a one-off course that, makes a pile of cash, ends up getting pirated, and almost always falls under some level of criticism or accolades, depending on who made the course, right? There's been some hits and there's been some misses. I'm not trying to say they never put out good content, but my whole point is, when I think of Upswing, I think of Doug, I think of Doug's YouTube content, I think of all of the bodies that he's left in the wake in order to bolster himself up as the end boss, as the evil empire, as the voice of the community. And I think it's only now that more of us are willing to like get on the mic regularly and contribute in a meaningful way to those around us, that people are kind of seeing like, man, this is a one-way street. He is just trashing everybody that is in this community, for better or for worse, and it's all just directing eyeballs at him. It's all funneling more money up to the top of Upswing. And in the process, it's creating a community divided where everybody is now forced to pick a team and rally behind the cry of scam, fraud, et cetera, et cetera. I can't remember whose Twitter I was reading yesterday, but they were talking about how ridiculous it is that the way the word scammers getting thrown around. Like, there are so many people in this industry that are actually stealing hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. We've covered a lot of them on this show that barely even get mentioned as a scammer or a thief or fraud or anything of the sort. But anyone who's in the public space that is potentially, trying to build a community, trying to build a brand, and then obviously trying to monetize those things is constantly called into question by the person who has the biggest platform to do so. And for me personally, I've spoken out about this a lot, but like, that's the lowest of low on the business ethics rung, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, you don't beat your competition by running a political campaign and dragging them through the mud. I understand that that's what American politics has become, but I don't think anybody...
The smear campaign.
Yeah, I don't think anybody appreciates that about American politics.
No, of course not. That's what everyone hates about American politics.
And we're certainly not electing the best candidates based off of who can run the best smear campaigns, right? Like, we want to be in a meritocracy, and we want to let our work show for ourselves. And I think, especially in this coaching space, which is still relatively new, even though, Card Runners dates back to like 2010, 2009, something like that. It's still relatively new, and we don't have a proper auditing process, right? The vast majority of the people out there that are willing to call JNandez a scammer who rips people off and, gets old grandmothers to knit scarves and doesn't pay them, and the vast majority of the people that are willing to echo airball sentiments that Solve for Why is a scam and that Berkey can't beat any games that he plays in and certainly can't coach on top of it, have zero exposure to us as individuals in the real world and to our products, right? The vast majority of the people that are wildly outspoken have no idea what a good piece of coaching content looks like. And that was evident last night in the spaces when Lynn starts trashing our roster and just starts with Brocus. It's like, this guy is one of the most well-respected coaches in the industry.
Right.
Anyone.
Right. That's where she starts, with Brocus.
Right. Anyone is lucky to have him do a piece of content for them, period. A guy like Matt Hunt has over 3,000 hours of coaching under his belt. Who cares if he doesn't have $1 million in Hendon Mob earnings?
Right.
Right? What are his online earnings? You didn't bother to go. Like, what are we taking these short measurements of? What's the purpose?
And it was all based around people's Hendon Mob, as if like there's not cash game players out there that don't play tournaments, right? We had she drags Jack Laxley's name through the mud, and like, he's put out really good content for us. Like, it's like, go look at it. Like, yeah, sure, it's a little outdated because he hasn't done anything for us for 3 years.
Right.
3 years, right?
Yeah, he transitioned out. He's into Bitcoin now.
Right,
like, that's
exactly.
fine.
Like, he wasn't like a tournament grinder. Of course he's going to have 50,000 on Hendon Mob. And I think, maybe you did this intentionally, but I don't know if you did or not. But like the promo, the sick day promo, where you get a free month of Solve for Why, like, it's like, go look. This is out to the entire poker community. If you think that our product sucks, well, here's a free month. Here's 6 free weeks to go watch everything we have, and then you can see whether we're qualified to teach people poker and get people better at poker. It's all out there. I guarantee you're going to find Matt Hunt's, all of his courses. All the solvers are wrong, and all his great MTT courses are more than valuable. Yeah,
and I think, like, at the end of the day, one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to have this discussion, it's to get the facts out there, because for so much of this, I think truths and half-truths have just been manipulated in the public eye to twist the narrative in one direction, right? So it's nice to give JNandez a platform to come out here, speak his truth, and at least provide some counterpoints to a lot of the bullshit that may or may not have been kind of stuffed down our gullets. But secondary to that is, I think that it's hypercritical that we put ourselves out there in a way where we start holding the loudest voices accountable for the words that they're saying, right? It's a weird space to be in when nobody wants to do the work of actually digging into what they're about to say being truth or not, right? Nobody wants to actually look and see what a person's results are. Deeb tried to get a man, imagine how much this guy is just stealing fucking money. He tried to get Airball to bet him that Airball wanted to bet Deeb that he's made more money in poker lifetime than Deeb and I combined.
It could never be proved, I don't think.
It couldn't, which is why you can just say like such hyperbolic bullshit.
Right.
But it's
that's
like he's
so absurd.
Bro, he was playing 2-5 18 months ago. So it's like you're telling me that in 18 months' time, you've made somewhere in the you've made north of 20 million.
Right. Well, I mean, Burke, you're in the negative. So once you're like 10 million.
Deeb also wanted to bet him that I would never have a losing year from now until I retired.
And Deeb's like plus 40 million, and he's still losing.
Well, he's not plus 40 million. That's a lot. But I mean, yeah, like we've been around for 20 years. We've made a lot of money. But like the fact of the matter is that we've created a space where there's only two measuring sticks. One is online graphs, and the other is what Doug Polk says.
Right.
And the first we don't have a lot of control over, especially if you're in America. You're just not grinding online. More importantly, there are way, way bigger opportunities live. And it's like, yeah, you're either going to accept what my bankroll tracker app says, or you're not, and it doesn't really fucking matter to me.
It's just so it's unbelievable that this is the measuring stick of what makes a person a good coach, or if the content is good. It's like, why not, Doug? Why don't you go through all of our courses? Go through the courses and then you can judge, is this good content or is this bad content, right? Because that's what matters at the end of the day. It's not, oh, this guy has this many results, or this guy has this, or
also,
it's like, is the content good? Is it valuable?
He's never going to do that.
Of course he's never going to do that, because that would destroy his whole argument.
Well, the thing is, like, it wouldn't necessarily, because like you can cherry pick plenty of bad content out of there, right?
I mean, maybe.
And we could do the same. I could go through the Upswing Lab and watch shit from 2016 and be like, this is absolute trash.
Of course. If you're going to go back to stuff we did like 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, it's outdated, it's wrong. That's how things work, right? You evolve. But if you want to take the last 3 courses that we put out and tell us that there's something wrong with them, then I implore you to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the bigger conversation that I kind of wanted to get into now that JNandez is here is just like, what's like, why now? I guess what drove you to want to go public now? Because I know why I'm being more outspoken now than ever, but it's certainly not. We're not necessarily in the same position, right? Like I've forcefully given myself a microphone, and I've taken a lot of shrapnel along the way, so it's just kind of my way of clapping back. But what drove you, I guess, to finally say enough's enough? I'm going to leak all this documentation from the lawsuit. I'm going to make it public knowledge that they lost this suit, because it was kind of quiet. Nobody really knew.
Yeah. There are several reasons. I mean, I think one of them, the most obvious one, is that it's just like the continuous lying. You know? Like if Doug would at least not say anything about it, it's different than just like continuously misrepresenting the facts. There's so many things that he is saying still to this day that are just not factual. And I think it is in the hopes that I'm just not going to respond, basically, because that was the proxy for the last couple of years. And first of all, someone continuously lies about you have to correct that. I guess the reason I didn't do it in the past, that's the bigger question than why I'm doing it now, is because maybe I just felt like, well, number one, I'm not very confrontational. Like I'm not looking for beef. I don't have beef with 20 people out there in the space. I'm not out here to make enemies. I'm a poker player and a coach. I'm trying to build my business and play poker and become good at it. That's it. Like that's a good life to me, right?
Yeah.
Once you engage into confrontation on socials, like your life becomes more difficult. Like it's uncomfortable, basically. But I spent more time in Vegas, spent more time in the US in the last year. And I just realized that there are so many people out there that still have this impression of me that I was in a shady situation. I was scamming someone. I was in breach of contract. I was wrongdoing someone. And I don't mind if people have a negative perception of me based on the truth. That's their thing to do, and that's fine. But if they think I'm something I'm not based on lies, then that's for me to correct, because how would they know otherwise? So if someone lies about me, I have to come out there and say something about it and correct it. And I just feel like in the last 12 months, I just gained more of a support system in my personal life, where I felt like I have people around me which support me, which have my back, and which encourage me as well to fight for what I think is right. And I felt because of that, You know, like it's a binary decision. You either go out there, because it's not something that you can just kind of fight. You either have to go out there, go all in, or stay all out. And it's a scary decision to make, especially if the court of public perception is pretty brutal sometimes. Like people on Twitter, they just say random stuff, insult you, berate you, accuse you on faceless accounts, and it kind of hurts you in some ways, you know, like it's uncomfortable basically to go out there and do that. But at some point I just realized if this is what it takes to speak my truth and at least be at peace with speaking my truth, then so be it, because the alternative to just being at peace, not saying anything, doesn't exist anymore. Like the decision to not be public or the decision to not have these things about me out there doesn't exist. It's a dream. So I can only either live with the fact that people believe a lie or go out there and fight, and both is uncomfortable. So at some point with a stronger support system, I was like, you know what, let's just go out there and tell the truth, even if the repercussions are uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. Do you feel like the court of public opinion has kind of shifted now, and that you're viewed more so on your body of work than you are this old past history?
Yeah, I definitely see that there is a shift. Like one of the most common things that goes through my mind, or went through my mind and still goes through my mind, and I think of a lot of people's mind, is that if they talk about something that they think is injustice, the first thing I would think about is no one is going to care anyway. Like if you come out there complaining about life or complaining about something, people will not support you, they will not believe you, they will not engage with it in a positive way. So why do it? The repercussions are very negative. And I learned now by going out there and trying to voice my opinion that that's not necessarily true. And there are people out there that do care about building a community where the truth is sort of the highest good that is being looked out for.
Yeah, there's a difference between defending a public statement and then the people that don't want to support you anyways, seeing that as an excuse. Where it's like, oh, I'm coming back and fighting after this thing that was said about me, and the people that don't have any sort of knowledge or recollection and looking at things at face value will say, oh, you're just making shit up. Or, oh, like, you're just saying shit, you're lying, you know, because Doug said this must be true, right?
Yeah.
So it's a negative feedback loop of trying to take your stance and have that defense while also not getting as much support from the community because you have a smaller platform. So it's a really tough thing when like someone's driving the narrative in those ways. And it's weird when he takes the stance of like on the podcast that nobody watches, he'll tell me like, you know, you guys like just say stuff all the time without actually having the facts straight. Well, it's like, why when you have the facts straight, you spin them in a way to make them seem like you don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty fucked, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Get him, Landon.
It's fucking dumb, dude. Like, what are we doing here? Grow up.
Yeah.
You're not a fucking kid anymore.
I love Spazzy.
How you feel, Doug? A 24-year-old just told you to grow up.
I mean, yeah, look, like, it's all funny. I don't know. Like, there's a way to do this, or there was a way to do this maybe in the past, where this doesn't end up being the end-all be-all. You don't end up having people sue you. You don't have people putting you on blast all the time. Mm-hmm. You don't have social media attacking you. It may be slightly less interesting, but like, there's a good nature way of doing this. Like, what comes to mind is the Twitter back and forth between like Wendy's and Burger King. Like, that's memeing, right? That's memeing at its finest. Mm-hmm. And it's never, I think the line always has to be drawn at when somebody's character is called into question, unless like they deserve to have their character called into question, right? I think we should be reserving that for very special cases, for people who do shitty things, for people who lie, cheat, and steal, for people who, like Doug, go on the offensive against otherwise good people that aren't doing anything to harm anybody, right? Like, this space is so competitive and cutthroat on its own that the notion that we're just supposed to play ball and laugh along when we're the butt of the joke, where our integrity is somehow being questioned, is mind-numbing to me. And it just tells me that nobody's, like, the people who are saying that have never been on the other side. Either they've never had their character and integrity called into question, or they've never truly, quote unquote, been punched in the face, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there are just so many big mouth bullies in this space that are clout chasing and trying to say the most outrageous things for clicks, for views, for attention. And it works. It works in the short term. We've seen so many come and go, right? Hashtag King is always the guy who comes to mind. He's the first one that comes to mind, right? Just a loudmouth asshole who got all the attention that he was seeking and then vanished off the face of the earth.
I didn't even know the story of that guy. I just remember that
he was just Fugazi, right? He was just Fugazi. New York Poker King's another one. Scammed for the better part of a decade and, you know, got all the attention he was looking for, but like is off.
Why do they
off
have
to another
King
space.
in their name? They have to like, they're trying to compensate. They're trying to like, you know, just get the New York Poker King, hashtag King, you got the King of LA.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is happening here?
It's always people that are trying to compensate for themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bunch of fucking
It's
losers.
like, oh, I'm a king.
Yeah, I mean, but the larger point that I'm trying to arrive at is these guys come and go because the community can recognize that they're full shit. Like they're and to be fair, like I think Airball fits this category. He's charismatic enough and seems to be rich enough that I think I truly believe people think he has staying power.
Yeah, well, people like, I mean, I've heard this multiple times. People are like, well, you know, I've met Airball and he's such a nice guy, and he, you know, I don't know why he gets this rap of who he is. Like, I've talked to him and he's just a really nice guy, and he seems harmless. Like, okay, yeah, because he's just like you said, he's charismatic, right? He has charisma, and that goes a long way. But like,
he also probably very much is those things. Like,
right? Yeah, for sure.
I see the way he interacts with other people, and he seems like a good dude.
Right.
He's just not in the words that he's saying publicly.
Exactly. Like, it's like, okay, that's one hand. On the other hand, he's out there calling people scammers that that are completely baseless.
I think that's the issue, is that both things can be true at the same time, and we as a community don't do a good enough job being critical of the second point, right? So like, so many people are willing to forgive things that Doug says because it's quote unquote Doug, right? And like somehow that's part of the shtick and part of the meme. Same thing with like Helmuth and a lot of other people that are otherwise pretty affable, right? These are likable guys who have done a lot for the community in one way or another. That doesn't excuse shitty behavior though, right? It doesn't excuse hiring somebody to do a job for you, and then whenever they come to you as a site owner and says like, look, I'm unhappy for reason X, Y, and Z, your response is, if you leave, I'll sue, right? And then whenever you realize you can't sue, the response then becomes, if you leave, I will absolutely destroy you in the public eye.
There's no negatives for doing what you're doing.
Right.
There's no punishment.
Right. Like, you know, we've had plenty of ups and downs building the company. We've had people come and go. Imagine if every time somebody like was like, look, I'm unhappy doing what I'm doing, whether it's because of me or not, and they're just like, you know, I think an amicable solution here is for us to part ways. Imagine if I was just like, if you do that, I will absolutely destroy you.
Yeah, I know. Right. It's ridiculous.
Right? It's taking...
It's this weird blackmail.
Yeah, it's like
digital blackmail.
It's also just not comprehending, or maybe fully comprehending, the power that the microphone gives you, right? Like, there is a certain responsibility to this, and of course you could use it nefariously for your benefit if you choose
we
to.
could be so rich if you were just had no business ethics and you're just a scumbag. We could be so rich.
Just
we
started.
could only be poker rich.
Could have just started a rap game.
No,
Right.
yeah.
The issue
you're
is just
poker rich.
like, even with the defamation of character stuff, it's not really provable. So you can
Right.
kind of say whatever you want, and people know at the implied that it is an issue. But from a public court of law sense, it's just people talking shit, and it could mean or could not mean whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
therein
and
lies the issue.
And I think that like we see too much fallout for people that don't deserve it, and not enough for those that do, right? Like the Jake Ali, Brins of the world, like those stories all fall by the wayside pretty quickly. They just disappear from the public eye. We stop talking about it. And, you know, don't get me wrong, like they show up to a poker tournament, I'm sure that they feel a lot of like what JNandez was describing. Right. And I know that feeling, man. It's sinking. You walk into a room doing the thing that you love, doing the thing that you've worked most of your adult life on, and you just know that there are eyeballs looking at you with like a totally different tint than who you actually are as a human being.
Yeah, in that sense, the difference was Ali and Jake literally did cheat and do all of these things, but JNandez didn't do any of these things.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say something about the defamation, because that's also something that is this still working? Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
That kind of again, Doug is trying to use that as a sign that he was acting rightfully. but there's a difference between winning defamation in a lawsuit and not actually harming and misrepresenting and lying about someone.
It's very hard to win in court.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
To prove defamation, it's very difficult.
And I mean, we knew that from the beginning.
Right.
And the biggest issue with us winning defamation, in my eyes at least, was their argument was Fernando's company now is a lot more successful than the PLO lab ever was. I was signed by GG Poker, which is one of the biggest poker site in the world. And I released a book by a big publisher. If my name got defamed, why are all these things true? Mm-hmm. And my lawyer's response obviously was, you're making him responsible for the success he has in spite of the defamation, not because of it. Right. And also one argument I want to mention that people sometimes use against me on Twitter is the idea that Doug made me famous. So the amount of people we had in the PLO mastermind, the members we had on the first month, exceeded the members we had by far in the PLO lab. And I think the reason for that is not because of the working relationship I have with Doug. I think him attacking me is what made me famous in that sense. Mm-hmm. Like I got eyeballs, not because I was working with them, but because they just attacked me relentlessly and made me bigger that way. Mm-hmm. And I still prefer it not to be that way, but it was not like, oh, I appreciated it. By the way, good that you was trying to destroy my name so I have a couple more customers. Like, obviously not. So there is a slight but important difference there. And the other thing I want to say is about, judge of character. I think when people defend Doug or similar people, maybe Airball, I don't know the backstory of that too well. Usually what they defend is their friend and who they know to be as their friend. Mm-hmm. And that's understandable that you're biased to defend who you know as a friend. But in order to fully understand and judge someone's character, you also have to think about how they act against and with people that are not their friends. And if someone is a very, very good friend, and I'm pretty certain Doug is a good friend. Like if you're friends with Doug, it's good. And he's a good character. But if he's lying and misrepresenting and zooing and acting in malice against people that he doesn't like, then that's also part of the judgment you have to bring in, even if you're a friend, about Doug. You can't just say, this is all, doesn't matter, all the things you don't matter. I know him, he's a good guy. Like it just doesn't work that way. And I think sometimes that sort of like double standard is being used with people like that.
It's just used everywhere. Forever, since the beginning of time, right? This is how Nick acts on social media. Everyone that knows Nick well knows that he's a good guy and well-intentioned, wants everybody to have fun. But at the same time, when someone takes the online persona of trying to ruin reputation, it's easy to let that go by the wayside when you actually like him and you know that he won't do that to you. Where you're coming from the standpoint of, this has been my friend for years. He's always been a good guy to me, but now he has an issue with someone and is taking liberties that aren't necessarily fair and spinning the narrative however he wants it because Doug let him go on the platform. And then Doug says, he's qualified to have his opinion. If he thinks he's a scammer, I'm going to let him say it. And we both know that you don't believe that to be true, but you let somebody say it without any counters because it hurts Matt as an individual and as a business.
I think that's something to dig into that we don't do really enough of. And it's hard to do enough of it because there just aren't enough people with big platforms that can kind of speak out on it. But, we somehow like, and maybe this is where Doug has kind of like fallen down a bit in most recent history, but he keeps kind of like hitching his wagon to losing causes, right? So he doubled down on the Sports Illustrated cover thing, tripled down on it whenever it got called out, whatever. And then like with the Airball thing saying like, well, this guy's a qualified source to call Matt a scammer. It's like, you're vouching for him then. Mm-hmm. Like by saying that, you're vouching for him, right? And then on top of that, he like, doubles down and says like, okay, well, like now I'm going to coach Airball to beat Matt in this heads up match, right? Very quickly realizes that this guy's uncoachable and then tries to walk it back. It's like, no, hold him to that. Because not only did he vouch for his opinion on his podcast and not push back and say like, you think he's a scammer and you're qualified to believe that to be true. I'm here to back you up as the host, right? But then he doubles down and basically says like, I will help you navigate this heads up match that you should already be overqualified for if this guy truly is a scammer. But like, we're going to put the nail in the coffin, right? Then whenever he realizes that's false, rather than apologizing, rather than saying like, I fucked up, I should have never given an unqualified voice such a large platform. I should have never hitched myself to such an unqualified poker player in a spot where he's drawing dead. No, he just says bullshit where he pulls up a bunch of hands that we both probably played poorly according to the solver and says like, look at this clown show. Aren't you all entertained? This is all because of me. It would have never even occurred if it weren't for like everything is so built around the narrative of him being the center of the universe, which, I get it. That's the way narcissism works. But we as a collective, especially those of us with microphones, have to start like just not letting people off the hook whenever they double and triple down on a bad take. It's not that hard to just say, I fucked up. I got it wrong. Right? Like Lynn's another perfect example of it. Like in that space last night, she's sitting there going like, unlike you, I'm willing to admit whenever I'm wrong. And I was just like, go ahead then. Go on. We're waiting.
Yeah.
Like say the words, I'm wrong and I'm sorry. Because I haven't heard it yet. Right? Like I haven't heard anything except like very light walking back. And that's not the fucking same as apologizing and admitting fault or admitting your failure.
It was like lightly walking things back, but then like doubling down on other things. So like what?
Right,
what
just like looking for an adjacent tangent to
Yeah.
double down on,
Yeah.
and like that's the template. That's literally the template that Doug has built, where it's just like, oh shit, I got caught saying a bunch of things that are mostly false.
Yeah, like the whole you getting backed by drug dealers. She's like, it's probably not probable, but it's possible.
Right.
Like what are we doing
We're
here?
just playing with language.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, it's like I'm telling you, man, the people who do this for public attention truly believe the audience is so stupid that they can't see through it.
Right.
And I think we're finally getting to a point where like people are getting insulted.
I think a lot of people saw through Lynn.
There was a literal part in the space where she said that she didn't say the thing she said, and the title of their video was the thing that she said that she did not say.
Yes.
You can
I
just
think
be
Jamie
more
posted
specific.
it, yeah.
She said that she never called me a scammer, and literally the title of the video with her face on the thumb is Poker Coach Scams
Yeah.
or something to that
It
effect.
was like,
Businessman puts poker scammer to the test
Yeah,
or
that's what it
something
was,
when he
yeah.
has nuts and you just have set.
God, you gotta love this shit, man.
Yeah,
No,
it's
you
just-
don't. You just don't.
Well, you don't, but like Conrad's point is valid. Like, what's better content than literally catching people in lies?
Oh, it's amazing. Catching people in 4K is the greatest thing of all time. If I could apologize, I just would. Yeah, but you didn't. If I want to say these things, I would. Yeah, but you did. Like, these actions have consequences, and everyone just thinks they get a free fucking pass. You know, like, when I got fucking dragged for the Perkins shit, I deserved it. I got fucking wrecked, and, like, everyone says the whole Clicker uncoachable shit, this, that, whatever. Clicker came in the last month. We did maybe 3 sessions, but
Yeah.
the narrative after he put that stuff up, Doug then retweets it and says, oh, Clicker, one of the best heads-up players in the world, calls this guy uncoachable. He was only in for the last 3 hours. Like, he coached me as much as Doug probably coached Airball.
Hey, for what it's worth, Perkins also beat Doug.
Yeah, well,
Sure. But, like, the point being, it's like, I did these things, I got wrecked, I deserve to get wrecked.
Yeah, and you owned up to it. And you
Yeah,
admitted
this
your
stuff-
mistakes, and like you
anyways,
were like making excuses for why you lost, and said like created this whole narrative.
Well, if I didn't have better guidance, I would have. If I didn't have people in my corner that were smarter than me say, hey, don't say anything about this because it doesn't come off the way you want it to and it doesn't help, I would have said like my defense statement, which wouldn't have been helpful in the slightest. But now when people take these stances and say these things of calling you a scammer, saying things they wish they regret and could retract, they think that there's no actions or consequences to what the fuck is going on.
because there aren't.
Right.
Because there just aren't. Right? Like, this is the closest we've seen to the people who are just saying things frivolously actually having to answer. Right?
Fucking retarded.
The willingness to the willingness to constantly be put in the public eye and have your opinions scrutinized, right? It's like, it's the thing that I catch the most flack for. Like, I host an opinion show 5 days a week. I'm going to get a lot of shit wrong. There are going to be so many takes I have that are bad, right? And there's going to be so much here. Like, I don't think people understand what it's like to be on the mic for 8-10 hours a week.
Obviously not. That's why they do what they do.
Right. It's nice when you have the help of an editor to ensure that like everything is completely dialed in. You have many, many days to put out content, right? It's like when you're speaking off the cuff, it's like people have forgotten what it's like to just be in a work environment, a social environment, and have water cooler talk. That's what podcasts are. You think we're the only ones in the world that are saying things and having hot takes that aren't exactly nailing it every time? Go to any other space. Go to sports, fantasy sports, betting.
Go anywhere.
Gaming. Like all of these places, the hot takes are why people tune in. They want you to be wrong so that they can tell you that they're wrong in the chat. It's what drives things.
Someone give me $15 for calling me stupid. It's like, thanks, I'm gonna go get a nice meal now.
Right. It's like okay, like that's part of being in this seat is like you own that shit, right? You don't double and triple down and act like you're this like, perfect voice. All you do is you try to lean on the things that define you as what you feel like is your value, right? Integrity, character, personality, like these are the things that you lead with. Whatever knowledge you happen to be able to intertwine there is helpful, right? But like if you think that somebody's going to speak for 600 hours a year on the mic and be right for 599.9 of them, you're way off, man.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the lines, things changed as to giving the people what they want from a content perspective versus leading with value.
Yeah, agreed.
Where the latter does not give as much as much viewership or engagement as the former.
The latter is an infinite mindset. The former is a finite mindset, right? It's the difference between building something slowly and developing a rapport and being authentic and curating an audience that the retention is high because they are invested in you as a person, versus the former, which is just kind of whoring yourself out for as many clicks as humanly possible in the near term.
So what do we think that they both had in that hand?
Right. It's all engagement farming, right? And it works. It works until it doesn't, right? Like
it works until you do the things that you're doing. Like you could play the engagement game by all means, right? By all means, play the engagement game. But there's clearly like some sort of ethical lines that you even know as a person that when you cross them, those things will always stick with you. Right? Saying that you want to retract these things you said, even though you knew that saying these things in the first place was an issue.
Right. Yeah, I think it's valid. You have anything you want to close on here, JNandez?
I got something for you.
What is it?
How do you feel about Aaron Rodgers being a Jet now?
That sounds amazing.
It's fucking official.
Wait, it
You
happened?
used a lot of words in a row that I don't know.
I was going to say, like,
Is that why?
I knew you had no idea about football.
Well, I looked on Twitter yesterday, and in my trending, it was Berkey, Aaron Rodgers, and Hillary Clinton. And I was gonna tweet like "fuck, marry, kill," but then I was like, "Oh, Twitter's gonna like suspend me because I'm like promoting violence." So I didn't.
Doing a fuck, marry, kill with trending names is really sharp.
If you guys want to do a fuck, marry, kill, Berkey, Aaron Rodgers, and Hillary Clinton, by all means.
That's a really fun game. Well, condolences to the Jets. I'm sorry that you're getting this washed ass quarterback for infinite money.
Yep.
JNandez, thank you so much for joining us today. I really
me.
appreciate you. You were a great guest. I'm happy to get that narrative out there and get some truth out on the timeline a bit. I got to get out of here. I got to go play Airhead, assuming he doesn't call in sick today. I know that there were talks of he may not be able to make it. We'll see. Rumor is he's buying it for $1 million.
If he does not attend, there'll be a 10K penalty.
I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Get those big chips out in front.
Yeah, get your big chips out in front. Updates to follow tomorrow. I think we're going to be joined by Brent Hanks. I'm not entirely positive. Landon and Conrad are heading off to Florida.
I might be here tomorrow.
As is Jeff Platt. But one way or another, we'll catch you guys all up on what happened on the spaces, what's been happening on the match. And then, of course, we'll have Strat Chat Wednesday with Matt Hunt. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We appreciate you for all the support. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment below after this is all said and done. We'll be back tomorrow, I believe 11 a.m. if Brent's with us. Otherwise, it'll be at noon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you then.
Stay popping.
Go night.